All right. So let me start by welcoming you back for our final session of National Ag Day. I'm Celia Glowacki, the Advocacy and Literacy Officer for National FFA. And happy National Ag Day. If you joined us earlier today or yesterday, I say welcome back. If you're brand new to the party and are here to learn a little bit about the AF&R value chain and perspectives, welcome. In prior years, NAMA and ACA, along with AFA, MANNRS, and 4-H, and FFA, have selected 100 students to participate in training similar to this, but we did it in Washington, D.C. So due to COVID-19, we've kind of had to change, and now we've created this really unique opportunity to tell you as agriculturalists, or just as the general public, receives National Ag Day training, and we get to open this up to anyone who wants to tune in. I really appreciate you joining us today as we try to flatten the curve while broadening our reach. Additionally, I'd like to thank NAMA and ACA for sponsoring National Ag Day and National Ag Week. It's vital for the government to learn the importance of agriculture. While we know our elected officials are busy with COVID-19 concerns, the sessions that you've been part of and this last one today are something you can take with you for the rest of your life. And hopefully it's something that after this difficult time is over, you can reflect on and share with your elected officials, should you choose. Additionally, a special thanks to our partner organizations, 4-H, AFA, and MANNRS. Having 4 youth organizations focused on agriculture and education surrounding it will not only convey the importance of our industry, but show the passion that we have within. I'd like to extend a special thanks to Debbie and Jenny from ACA and NAMA, Emily from AFA, Ebony and Ashante from MANNRS, and Beth from 4-H. Earlier, we had a storytelling session from Reagan. Always learn something new from Reagan and see how we can put those into our everyday lives as we develop blogs or Instagram posts or just kind of our general overall knowledge. And next, we're going to have that glimpse into the AF&R value chain. Like yesterday, these sessions are interactive, so please make sure you use the chat button or the Q&A on your screen. We had 3 awesome sessions yesterday, and if you missed them and want to revisit, please go to FFA.org's Advocacy and Literacy page. You can see the link on the screen, or you can search it on FFA.org. You can also find them on agday.org. The handouts from yesterday are on there as well. Also, if you joined us for the 3 sessions yesterday, you'll know we have kind of a fun competition. We have 3 takeaways that we'd like for you to complete. The handout module from FFA.org, from Jason's first session yesterday. Write a thank you note to your elected official. You can do this handwritten, or you can send an email. You'll be able to find that contact information online. And lastly, do an elevator pitch on social media. We talked about in Reagan's third session yesterday, how to really share what's important to you in agriculture. Make sure you tag some elected officials and use hashtag AgDay20 and hashtag SpeakAg. You take part in all of that, email me screenshots or links by March 27th to my email, cglowacki@ffa.org. Enter you in a drawing. Our partners and sponsors have contributed some really cool things. So that being said, I will stop sharing my screen, if I can remember how. And I will turn it over to one of my favorite people who I've spent a lot of time with planning this, Jason Wetzler.
That's me. I am the person sharing my screen. All right. Everyone see that okay? Cool. I can't hear anyone. I just forgot that. Let me get this, see if I can find a way to, oh, wow. Okay. All right. There's the chat box. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Thanks, guys. So, a couple things to start us off. Because this is virtual and we're not flying to DC and we're not limiting to the 100 people we originally planned, and we have more people involved, I decided, you know what, it's a party. Let's do this. So initially, when we were thinking about this session, we're thinking about a way to kind of tie everything together, because we're talking about advocacy, we're talking about storytelling, we're talking about the agricultural industry as a whole, something we're all passionate about. But the beautiful thing is that even though we all share a passion, we're all so incredibly different in a lot of different ways. And so this session is focusing on a couple different things. I named it, how many agriculturalists does it take to screw in a light bulb? Is that what I said? Something like that. Because we're going to talk about how something starts as an idea or a concept or a problem or a challenge, and then ends up in someone's home or on someone's plate or in someone's car or on someone's, wrist as a watch or whatever. A product from the beginning to the end. Now, the cool thing is I don't know if this is cool or not, but I was not smart enough to develop. This is a big topic, big content on my own. And so I've invited my friend and my former National FFA officer teammate, Asa Jackson Harris, from Alabama, to help me. And he and I spoke on the phone for about 2 hours, and we developed this content. Now, he does this full time. In fact, he's his job. He works at the University of Alabama. He's a coordinator with the Crossroads Community Engagement Center. I'll let him talk about what that means here in a second. How many agricultures does it take to change a light bulb? Thank you. And what he does is he tries to get people to see other people's perspectives. I mean, that's his goal. That's his mission every day. And he does it in a really cool way. I'll say this. He's an incredible artist. He's got a Spotify, Asa J. Harris. So follow him on Spotify. Give him a shout out. Take a listen to some of his music. It's awesome. And that's my shameless plug for him. Now, Jackson, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell people a little bit about what you do and why this topic is important to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'm Jackson. I don't know if I can do this in my video, but anyway, I'm Jackson, and like Jason said, I work here at the University of Alabama, although right now I'm in my home because the University of Alabama is shut down, like most institutions of higher ed right now. But on a regular day and a regular week, without a global pandemic, as Jason mentioned, my primary responsibility is to work with dialogue programs and citizenship building programs and those sort of things. So those are inherently about recognizing how everything fits together and making sure that perspectives are heard. So in my line of work, when we talk about advocacy and sharing your story, and we talk about democracy generally, we talk about not only the ability of people to be able to share their perspectives, share their stories, and advocate for themselves and their interests. We talk about the importance of other people listening to those voices and making sure there's space for those voices. But anyway, it's good to be back in FFA land, even via some severe social distancing. And I appreciate Jason and all the partners that put on National Ag Day for having me in on this.
Thanks, Jack. And I'm going to keep getting muted when he talks because my computer gives some feedback. So Celia, feel free to keep doing that as we work through this. So Jackson and I are going to be walking through this session together. Again, I'm interactive. I'm engaging. I want to engage with you guys. And so as we go through this, make sure you guys are using that chat box just like we have the entire time. So I actually changed when I was listening to Reagan's presentation, man, that was pure gold. I actually went and I was changing my presentation to kind of apply some of what he was talking about. So we're going to get a chance to talk about how we connect with people right now. So yesterday, if you were a part of my session, we did a kind of virtual icebreaker. We're going to do a similar thing, but a little different. And here's how. Reagan talked about how our stories create connections. They build connections with other people because we identify with the common themes that those stories are trying to communicate. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to, again, type our preferred social media platform and username into the chat bar. Choose another participant we see and go to their profile. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter would probably be the best for these. Choose one piece of their content, a photo, a tweet, a post, and then comment how it connects to you in your life. Okay, so let's do that now. Social media and username, you guys make sure you type username in there as well. Go to their profile, choose a piece of their content, and comment how it connects to you. My social media is down there on the bottom of the screen. Feel free to hit me up as well. Hopefully you guys get some follows, build some connections. We'll do this for about a minute or two. And I'm gonna do it as well here. I'm going to Instagram, by the way. Let's see. Turtle Girl 301. I like it. You may have to follow these people to see their stuff. Yeah, just requested. Let's see if she gets back to me. Cody's. Oh, here we go. T-Jop 10. Here we go. I'm going to that one. Oh man, is that a buffalo? That's awesome. This is a great buffalo. So my fiance Jonelle, her favorite animal is buffalo. So whenever I see buffalo, I think of Jonelle. Thank you for connecting to my life. You guys are killing it. Take about 30 more seconds. Connect with someone. I love it. Get yourself some followers. Drop your SoundCloud if that's your thing, whatever. All right. Let's wrap up our social media connections. Again, our stories create connections. So as you guys go throughout today, your story is not going to be a direct piece of content we cover, but it weaves in and throughout. And I'll be telling some stories, and Jackson will have a few stories he shares as well. So we're going to get started. Again, today, just to give you guys some context, when we talk about the value chain, what do we mean? Well, we'll cover it in depth here in a second, but basically, how does a product move from research and development to the consumer household? Okay, in agriculture specifically. And FFA has some pretty good pieces of content out there if you guys want to look it up afterwards, as far as what the value chain is and how it works, supply chain, all those things. But we're going to cover it broadly right now, and then we're going to tie it more so. We're going to talk about less about the products themselves and more about the people, because everything we've been talking about has been centered on agriculture. But I think what you would be remiss if you walked away from National Ag Day not understanding that what we're really talking about is the people in agriculture. When we're advocating, we're talking to people. When we're telling our stories, we're creating connections with people. And to do that, to understand that we've got to ask a certain question. And that essential question for this session, if you guys remember my essential question for all National Ag Day, which is what can I learn, say, or do now to become create a brighter future for agriculture? Well, the essential question for this session, I'll introduce a little later on. And here's what it is. Here's how we're going to start. So you guys look at this image really quick, and it says, who's at the table, okay? Me, I'm in one chair, and then my buddy Mojito's in another chair. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Mojito. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a national officer, we had the opportunity to travel to the country of Japan. Now, Japan was an incredible country. We saw all kinds of things, but one of my favorite experiences of all the things we saw was in a city called Toyota City, Japan. Now, you may think, what's in Toyota City? And you could probably guess. That's where Toyota is headquartered. So we got to actually tour Toyota's headquarters, the international headquarters, but we also got partnered with families in that city, and we got to stay with that family, okay? So all 6 of us were split up. Now, I think 2 of us went to one house, but I was actually by myself, and this was an incredible experience. The first, we went to the school where all these students went to school, and we met with them as a group, and then we got introduced to our families and our host student. Now, my host student did not speak any English at all. His parents did not speak any English at all, and his little brother Mojito did not speak any English at all. So the way we communicated was one of 2 ways. The first way, the most common way, is we used our phones, Google Translate, and I would say something into the phone, and then Google would translate it in Japanese, and then they would laugh or say something, or maybe it didn't translate right, and then they would translate back to me, and of course I would laugh because maybe it didn't translate right, and we'd be able to communicate that way. Around day 2, I was introduced to their really good family friend, and she, for a full-time job, was a professional hula dancer. She's one of those like moms or aunts that is just like so big, so energetic, sees you and just gives you a big hug the first time she meets you. That was her. So we could communicate through her as well, because she was actually from Hawaii living in Japan. She spoke English. So this was this experience. And about day 2 of the homestay, I wake up for breakfast and I go to the table and I'm sitting at the table. And right now it's just me and Mojito sitting across from each other. And I think we were having some sort of pastry or something. And on the table was a jar of blueberries. Now, that doesn't sound very interesting, but what you have to understand is when I was in high school, during the summertime, I worked in a blueberry factory. Okay, so our job was to take the raw products, put them into jars, and ship them out. And my job we would sometimes work 18-hour, 24-hour shifts trying to fill orders, was to take mason jars off of a pallet and put them onto a conveyor belt. All day, jars, conveyor belt, jars, conveyor belt. That's what I did all day. It was miserable. One day, though, I actually got to go to the other side, and I got to help take the labeled jars now. So instead of the blank jars, they were labeled jars, and I got to help move boxes of them onto the pallet, then put them on the truck. And so I got a chance to look at that label. And what struck me as I sat in that chair in Japan, thousands of miles away from my home, thousands of miles away from that job, years removed from that job, is I looked in the center of the table on the exact same label that we used in that factory to jar those blueberries was sitting in front of me in Japan. And it blew my mind. What are the chances that I get elected national office, we go to Japan, we happen to go to Toyota City, which other teams had not gone to before. I get randomly paired with a student. I go to their family's house, and they had happened to buy the same jar of blueberries that I canned back in the factory in Dayton, Oregon. So this is the first time that, for me, my eyes were open to the value chain of agriculture, the incredible power of being able to research and develop a product, move it through the value chain all the way to the end user. And it was the first time that I had witnessed two aspects of the value chain sitting at the table at the same time. What do I mean by that? Well, let me introduce you really quick to the value chain. Okay. So who's at the table? Research and development. Okay, so again, that's simply researching a product. Okay. We do the research. We understand what the problem is. We create innovative new processes or products or solutions to these problems. Pre-production, okay? So it's machinery, seed. You run the data. You figure out how it's going to work. The production. So these are the farmers, right? We know these people. These are people out hard working in the field, making sure we have food. Supply chain. So these are the trucks that are running. These are, the people that are making sure one product gets from A to B, the end product, okay? So this is the combined thing. So the blueberries themselves, the juice they're in, the jars, the lid, the labels, all that. Sales, service, and support. So these are the companies that were selling the blueberries from our factory, okay, the manufacturer, to the end user, like a grocery, or not the end user yet, like someone else, like a grocery store where the end user might go. And finally, the consumer. That would be Mojito, okay? So that is the value chain. So who's at the table right now? Well, right now it's just me and Mojito. But here's a little challenge for you guys. I want you guys to talk about really quick with whoever's in your house. Maybe it's your dog. Who else is at the table? Who else is at the table with Mojito and myself? Okay. So again, I was part of the supply chain. Okay. Mojito was the consumer. Who else was a part of that process of getting those blueberries on the table? Let's take 30 seconds, and you guys feel free to type like production and then like make up a name and put their job title in the chat. Let's do that now. Just choose one of those chairs and tell me who else might have been at the table. Feel free to make up a name and then what job might be relevant to getting those blueberries on the table. So for production, right, that would be a pretty easy one. Maybe that person's name is James and they are a blueberry farmer. Boom. Let's have some other people volunteer some different chairs. So maybe someone choose R&D. Tell me a name and a job. Dan, blueberry farmer, production. Love it. Henry, grocery store stocker. Yes. Jim Halpert, sales and marketing. That's fantastic. Y'all are getting it. Okay. That's what I like to see. Okay. This session, beyond the value chain itself, is about who gets a seat at the table. Okay? Who gets a seat at this table? when we're talking about advocacy, what does the table represent, right? The table represents the conversations, the important conversations that are happening. Okay. So right now, there's important conversations happening in our capital about funding for the crisis that's going on in our country. Who gets a seat at the table for those conversations? Who gets a chance to voice their opinion when it really matters? And are those people considering everything they need to consider? So that's what we're going to talk about. So here's what we're doing now. So I've done this real quick. I just want to show you guys mine. So Jargak is the blueberry farmer. Jolene's the heavy equipment operator. Joppenheim is a biotechnologist in research and development. Jilp is a construction engineer. Jorp is the sales, service, and support. He's a graphic designer. Jehoshaphat is a food safety manager. And finally, Jabone is a food chain outreach coordinator. Okay? So all these people were needed to make sure that those blueberries were sitting on the table for Mojito and I to enjoy. Okay? Now, obviously, these are made up, but we're going to have a little fun with it. Here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to ask for a little input from you guys. Little homework assignment. You guys have a table of your own on your worksheet. If you don't have the worksheet, the link is in the chat. You guys are going to be choosing a product in your house, whether that's Starbucks coffee, whether that's Ritz crackers, whether that's the wooden table that have your computer on. Whatever that product is for you, choose one product, and you guys are going to be creating your own value chain for that product. What to include? Name, job, just like we did, their hometown, a hobby they have, and a strength of theirs. Okay? Maybe their strengths are back squats. I don't know. Maybe their strength is interpersonal communications. It's up to you. Okay, name, all that's listed there. We're going to take 2 to 3 minutes. And as we do this, feel free, if you think of something really creative you want to share with the group, feel free to hit up the chat. 2 to 3 minutes. Again, getting creative with it. These are not real people, but they should be real jobs. And then creating their hometown hobby strength. If you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. Let's go through this exercise now. Whatever product you like to use. R&D is research and development. Great question. So research and development would be the initial phase, right? If you guys want to see this chain, feel free to go to ffa.org/value-chain. Yeah, I like it. Johnny Inc. Another website for this that's a really good one that I've actually spent some time on is Ag Careers. I think it's .org. Is that right, Celia? Is it .org? .com. Or Ag Explorer. Ag Explorer. Yeah, that's right. Ag Explorer. So as you guys are creating this, be thinking about not just the role or the job these people have and the physical things they would do on a day-to-day basis to get their product or that product to the consumer, but think about who these people are. Think about where they come from. Think about things they do when they're not working. Think about things they're good at that may or may not be relevant to their job. Printer salesman, Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas. I have a friend from Paris, Texas. So as you guys are going through this, when you finish, here's my challenge. We're going to get some sponsor engagement with this. As ridiculous as these names and jobs may be, take a picture of your table and tweet it out, put it on your Instagram, whatever, and use those hashtags that we've been using for National Ag Day. All right, just going to take about 30 seconds to wrap up our value chains. We're going to move on. So you may be thinking, okay, how does understanding how Starbucks coffee gets from research and development to someone's cup in their house, what does that have to, how does that relate to advocacy? How does that relate to who people, what we've been talking about these last 2 days? Well, let me answer for you. As we know right now, there are conversations being had all around the country. If this were actually National Ag Day yesterday, the 100 leaders that would have joined us from AFA, MANNRS, 4-H, and FFA, they would have actually had conversations at a table face-to-face with their elected officials, their representatives. Now, how do they get a seat at the table? Well, let me take you back to my time in Japan when I was sitting there at breakfast with Mojito. I was awestruck because I thought, man, it's so rare that I'm sitting here at this table. I began to really evaluate it and think it's really not. Because people like you that are choosing to invest your free time in yourself, invest your free time in your own development, your own growth, by listening to webinars like this, you are the people that usually end up with a seat at the table. Young people that are driven, that are hungry, that have values, that, like Reagan was saying, look people in the eye and shake their hand. You're the people that end up with a seat at the table. And since you have a seat at the table, you have a responsibility to consider what you're saying. You have a responsibility to understand that what you're saying affects not just you, but the entire chain of agriculture. Every single one of those people you put on that piece of paper is affected by what you say at the table. So, our first thing we're going to fill in here is that when we don't intentionally include everyone, we are unintentionally excluding someone. Let's go ahead and fill that in on our note sheet right beneath that dotted line. Jackson, how does this quote relate to what you do on a day-to-day basis, and how have you seen this play out in some of the lives of the people you work with?
I'm going to make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me all right, Jason, and all my FFA friends? Yeah. Okay, so, I think anytime we make, thank you, Yupperdoodles, that is a great affirmative. I appreciate it. I think anytime anyone makes decisions, like Jason was saying, we have this responsibility to ask ourselves that question, right? What do we need to do to intentionally include somebody so that we're not unintentionally excluding someone? And basically what that means is, Jason was saying something very strong there about it's people like us, people like you all who are on this webinar who show up in the rooms. But that's not to say that there aren't people who have values, who have a good speaking ability, who are able to tell their story, who can shake hands and look people in the eye and that sort of thing. It's not to say that those people aren't somehow outside of the room as well. At the end of the day, I think what we consider in our day-to-day is noting that there are a lot of people who care about this issue or who this issue impacts. There are only a certain number of people here in this room, whatever room that is. I remember when Jason and I got elected to be on the same team together, one of the first things we did was our team coach gave us a picture of the 50-something people who had applied to be on that same officer team. There was only 6 of us on the team, but there was 50-something that were on that sheet of paper. And we looked at their faces pretty regularly to ask ourselves, what do we need to be doing as the 6 of us to be intentionally including the thoughts, the perspectives, the great ideas, the good initiative of all these people in this picture and all the people across our organization that we represent. And that's not just true with FFA. That's true with any organization we find ourselves as leaders in. We have to be asking, what are the things I need to go out of my way to do to make sure the perspectives other than my own are represented here in this space. Jason, does that answer the question all right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I get back here. Absolutely. And I think Jackson said it exactly right. There's nothing much I can add other than when we talk about advocacy, the reason that what we're talking about now is important is because you're being trained on how to advocate, you have to understand who you're advocating to, but also who you're advocating for. We've talked about who you're advocating to, understanding your audience. We talked about how to do that, tools on how to do that. Now we're just trying to say, hey, there are people whose lives you have to consider outside of the room. That's all we're trying to say. So let's go ahead and answer the question right beneath that quote. How does this quote relate to our responsibility as a leader who gets a seat at the table? Let's go ahead and write on our note sheet and then share our answers in the chat box. There's that question written there. What does this quote say about our responsibility as a leader and someone who gets a seat at the table? Feel free to share some of those responses in the chat box, and we'll wait for some of those to come through. Make sure everyone has a seat. If we're the ones leading, we have to think about what other people want as well. Sure. Consider all perspectives. Yes, we're about to hit on that. Keep our thoughts open. Man, that's a challenging thing to do, right? Take advantage of the opportunity of having a seat at the table. We can't include every person right at the table. Advocates have to be able to speak for all the ones who are not physically there. Yeah, for sure. Be mindful of others and their perspectives. Yes, and we're about to get into that. Speak up for those who are actually in the arena doing the jobs. Ask them what they need. Yes. So that brings up a good point, right? Right now, there's people going to work on the front lines, as they say, right, in the face of this pandemic. Meanwhile, there's other people having conversations that will absolutely affect their lives. Those people working, they physically can't be in the room. But their perspectives are so important because they're the ones making sure that we have our shelves in our grocery store stocked, that food is being transported from A to B in a safe and efficient manner. They can't be in there in the room having those conversations. I love it. They're great thoughts. So as we continue to go, I have a kind of a little bit of a riddle, a little bit of a quiz for you. Okay. So here's a picture of a table. I pointed out who is not the leader, and I pointed out who is the leader. In the chat box, tell me why. Why is the chair that I pointed to the leader and the person on the left not? Works well with others, sure. Someone by their side, absolutely. Surround ourselves with others' perspectives. Yeah. So I think, man, these are awesome. Work with the crowd, not decide on their own. Behind them, wants of others. Be a true team player. Love it. So I think, hey, I appreciate all you guys' responses. Those are all incredible and all absolutely correct. And I think this, to me, Jackson taught me this lesson as we were talking on the phone through this content. And something they do, and something that he asks all the time over and over and over again, is what perspectives have we not considered? What perspectives have we not considered? And they ask over and over again. But the genesis of that question, I think, is a really fun story. And I think as we talk about being at the table as a leader, asking the question, what perspective have we not considered, is so important. But I want Jackson to share really quick in his line of work, some of the workshops he does, how that question came to be and why it's so important to him. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's always something that I continue to learn. Several years ago, we started putting these workshops together for people on campus here at the university, and then off campus in our Tuscaloosa and statewide community. And one of the kind of key things were, what kind of questions should good citizens, should good leaders, should good community members be asking? And some of these questions were, could you clarify what you mean when you say this, or would you tell a story about this? And I know y'all talked a lot about the importance of stories so far in advocating. And so we tried to make sure that we're the kind of people who ask those stories and invite people to tell those stories. But one of our most important questions there, and we arrange them as ACTS, A, C, T, and S questions. But that A question stands for arranged space. And so for workshop after workshop with hundreds and hundreds of people year after year, the A question that we would practice was, what perspectives haven't we heard yet? And as you can probably tell from what Jason's already said, that's important, because if you're going to be the leader at that side of the table, you're always asking that. Well, who's not here, right? And then one day after we'd done the workshop, somebody came up to thank us for our time, and they said, really enjoyed this. I really think the questions are important. However, I've got a member of my family that's in the deaf community, and I just wonder, if it's all the same to you, could you make that A question for arranged space, could you make that, what perspectives haven't we considered, as opposed to haven't we heard? And of course, it didn't make any difference to us at all. It was just as strong of a question to ask, what perspectives haven't we considered, rather than what perspectives haven't we heard. But ironically, we had not asked that question enough. We had not asked that question to ourselves enough as we put together that workshop curriculum and gave those workshops over and over again, about how might this wording, even the very words we were using, how might this wording unintentionally exclude someone who might be able to take some value from this workshop. And so I learned a lot of that day, is you can never ask that question enough. What perspectives haven't we considered yet? Because there'll always be somebody who's outside of the room. And I noticed that as humbling as it may be, that made us more effective in the role we were given. And it makes more people feel included and feel like that workshop was made for them and they were a part of that experience. But anyway, I hope that answers that, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so powerful to kind of be take a step back and look at ourselves and say, what perspectives have we not considered? And to the point of Jackson, that's I smiled when I heard him tell that story to me for the first time, because it's so incredible to think, they're trying to do their best to teach this lesson, and in doing so, they learn it themselves again. And so you can never be good enough at, you can never ask that question enough. What perspectives have we considered? So the answer to our riddle here is, the leader is not the person who is at the head of the table. The leader is the person who is adding a chair. And I'm going to credit Jackson for that quote. Feel free to write that down and fill in the blanks. The leader is not the person at the head who is at the head of the table. The leader is the person who is adding a chair. To sum everything up, I think sometimes we can get overwhelmed with the amount of difference in opinion in our country. And that's fair, because there's a wide variety of people with backgrounds and perspectives and thoughts, and they're all valuable. As a leader, as a leader in an FFA, as a leader in your community, as a leader in your family, when you get a seat at the table, remember that as a leader, you are not the person at the head of the table. You are the person who is pulling up a chair for someone else. As you begin to think about how you're going to apply all the lessons you've learned in advocacy, in storytelling from Reagan, and connecting to your audience, in writing a blog, in doing whatever you're going to do, I mean, there's so many ways to apply what we've talked about. Please don't forget to ask, what perspectives have we yet to consider? Because when you do that, your impact increases exponentially. And I think only closed-minded people would say it's not important to consider others' perspectives. Only people that want to minimize their impact would say it's not important to consider all perspectives. Only people who want to minimize their leadership abilities, who want to, not leave a lasting impact on this world, would think that's not important. But people that want to impact the world, people that want to make sure that we're set up as a global citizenship, as a nation, as a community, to tackle challenges like the one we're facing now. People that want to make sure that they're at the forefront, being a leader, are the ones saying, what perspectives have we not considered? And they're the ones pulling up a chair for someone else. Let's go ahead and really quick, let's answer the final two questions on our notes page, which is, how did this session help answer my essential question? If you're part of our first session, you can answer that. And then the second question as well. If you were not a part of the first session, let's go ahead and just answer this question. How am I going to pull up a chair for someone else in the next week? How am I going to pull up a chair for someone else in the next week? Let's go ahead and answer that question. Take about 1 minute to do that. Another thing I want to do is, because we have such a wealth of knowledge on this topic in Jackson, and our other panelists as well, if you guys have any questions right now, maybe some harder questions to ask or some harder questions to answer, like how do we, one thing I ask myself is, how do I consider perspectives that I don't agree with? Okay, tough one. Yep, the National Ag Day essential question, hold up right now, was this. What can we learn, say, or do now to shape the future of agriculture? If you have any questions about this topic, about considering others' perspectives, about pulling up chairs at tables, about leading through adversity, things like that, we can go ahead and drop those questions into the chat box. We have a few extra minutes right now. Jackson's standing by to answer those. I'm standing by to answer those. Celia, Reagan, I believe, and Caleb are all on as well. So anyone's welcome to chime in. Any questions at all about this topic as we kind of wrap up the National Ag Day content before we head into our final kind of session with Celia, Reagan? If not, again, guys, this is what I do for a living. I just try to connect people to content to make their lives better. My information is on the bottom right of your screen. Feel free to connect with me if I can do anything for you. If you, want me to listen to a speech you got coming up to a group, if you want to run through a story, if you want me to edit a blog post, whatever, I'm free. And guess what? Since my job revolves around in-person events and those aren't happening, I got some time. So let me help you out. Whatever I can do for you. If you have any questions, again, feel free to shoot me a message. Jackson, he's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. Feel free to connect with him as well. He's also on Spotify, and he's got a great voice. Asa J. Harris on Spotify. With that.
Hey, Jason, can you go back to your value chain slide?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. And then you have a very important question that only you two can answer, because I'm definitely not qualified to answer that one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jackson, take it away.
That's a great question, and I think Jason and I probably both get it a lot. And I'll just say this: I think the most important thing about whatever your goal is, right? Whatever, if it's to be an Olympian, If it's to be a D1 athlete, if it's to be a professional singer, whatever, whatever it is, if it happens to be a state or national FFA officer, that's a great goal as well. But I think one of the most important things is to make sure that your goal is not your identity, right? So even if you are an Olympic athlete, right, and hopefully you get a chance to compete in the Olympics this year or next. But even if that is your thing, right, that's your goal and you're able to succeed at it at whatever degree, I think separating that from your identity and who you are, even who you are as a leader, as an individual, I think that's very, very important because as we can say, I mean, Jason just mentioned he's got his whole work built around these in-person events. But as you can tell from sitting with him virtually, his whole identity isn't based on whether or not he could be with y'all in person at National Ag Day in DC, right? He's still able to do his thing and be Jason, even via virtual distance, and he's still the same Jason that I call up on the phone as a buddy of mine. So I think that's the most important thing, and it's probably not the best answer to your question, or maybe not what you're looking for, but I think the most important thing, whether it's state or national FFA office or any other goals that you might have, making sure that you're pursuing those goals in a way that is detached as much as possible from who you are as a person, as an individual, as a member of your community. And I think that'll bring you the most success. Because I'll say this, even if you become a state FFA officer, let's say you become a national FFA officer, those opportunities only last 1 year most of the time. And then what? After you're done, who are you then? And so that's why it's so important to continue to build and grow and add some depth to your personal identity, and then let the goals be goals and keep them in their place. I hope that was helpful. Jason?
Yeah, so I just want to this back absolutely everything Jackson said, and I think it ties directly into what we talked about with essential questions. An essential question is not, can I get elected national officer? What does it take to be a national officer? That's a good question, and it's something you have to ask if that's a goal of yours. But an essential question is why do I want to be a national officer? And when you begin to connect your what's to a why, things become more clear. And so whatever you want to do, again, whether it's be an Olympian, be an FFA officer, you want to be a professional speaker, you want to be a professional blogger, whatever it is, unless you have a why that is driving that what will peter out, it'll fall short, it'll get boring, it'll get stale, and you'll move on to a different what. And you'll continue that cycle completely untethered to anything. But if you have a why, a reason for doing something, then what's and who's and where's and when's will stem out of that. So I encourage you guys to look up a guy named Simon Sinek in a book called Start With Why. That has motivated. It's driven a lot of things that I've done. There's a TED Talk you can watch as well if you don't want to read a whole book. Start With Why would be the thing I recommend if you want to do anything in your life that has purpose and value. But again, asking those essential questions and pursuing answers to those instead of the shallower, kind of easier questions to answer. All right, Celia, heading back to the value chain. Any other questions?
Cash, I'll add to what Jason and Jackson said. Making sure your identity is something deeper. I had an unsuccessful run for state office in Oklahoma, and I didn't know how to disconnect that I wasn't FFA. So it was really hard for me to deal with. And quite honestly, it took a long time for me to come back to the world of agriculture and agriculture education. So, but I'm here now, and I'm hoping that through the last few days, like I know I'm personally making a bit of a difference. So making sure that you're doing it for a why. And I think my why was because I just felt like I was almost entitled versus that whole servant leadership of what is our youth organization, I think is really important. So I would add that. And I love the Simon Sinek book. We did that when I was state staff in Indiana. We read it as a team with our state officer team that year, and it was really, really important. So find your why. Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons is something I will add. Jason mentioned the value chain, and for you educators who are on here, this is a relatively new resource. And if you click on whether it's the R&D or the production or the supply chain, there will be some lessons and some videos and careers associated with each button on that. And if you're a young agriculturalist trying to figure out where you are in life and what you want to be, between this and Ag Explorer that we shared earlier, you'll be able to really make a difference and kind of grasp where you are and what you want to do in life. Before we wrap up, I would like to, hopefully Reagan and Caleb and Jackson are still with us. If you guys will turn on your camera and come back with us, I'd like to, even if your hair is messy or whatever, I would love to see you guys one more time on camera, just for so everybody can see you all. I want to say thank you. National FFA would like to say thank you. Thank you guys for being part of the last 2 days, part of National Ag Day as a whole. We, for everybody listening, we turned this around in about 5 days. So we knew that we couldn't go to DC. Once we shared the communication, these awesome men turned around these great programs. We put them together and we brought them to you all. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's meant the world to me to have you guys, Caleb, Jason, Reagan, and Jackson. Thanks for joining us today. Your perspective has really added something to it that I didn't think it could. And look at everybody saying thank you. So deep in my heart, from my heart and from who I am, thank you guys for everything. We appreciate it. I have a little bit more of a spiel to kind of wrap stuff up, and then I will actually share. We'll stop the recording on this since it will go to the nether regions to be buffered, and we can upload it for later use. But I will share a little brain dump for a session with Reagan right after this. So if you guys want to come back, we can chat some more and just kind of have some really cool open conversation. I will actually open your mics so you guys can talk. So thank you guys very much for joining us. So I'm going to take back control. Thanks, Caleb, Reagan, everybody. I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
So I have gained back a little control. And then I have Jason's head talking to me. No, just kidding. So yes, let's see. So again, thank you. If you're on social media, make sure you are talking about today with hashtag AgDay20 and hashtag SpeakAg. Special thank you to NAMA, ACA, 4-H, MANNRS, and AFA for being part of this awesome program and letting us kind of run with it. I've included, and I just broke it. Hold on. I broke the screen. I included some social media tags for our sponsors, if you see so fit. The 8 national FFA sponsors who helped with today, CHS for the overall National Ag Day sponsorship. These companies really understand the importance of advocating for agriculture and creating advocates for agriculture. So if you see fit, I would really appreciate it. If you want to join Reagan's session, or like kind of just a free-for-all we're going to have in a moment, I'll shut this down as soon as I get done talking and start this one back up. There's your login information. I just shared it in the chat, so cut and paste it. Or you can email me at cglowacki@ffa.org and I will send it to you. Here is the thank you information for CHS. So if you want to grab a photo, or you can revisit these talks in a little bit, you can do that. Please send them a thank you note. And I just lost the National FFA one, but I will get those back up. PowerPoint quit on me. Awesome. So I will turn that off and stop sharing the screen. Thank you, PowerPoint. But please join us. Thank you again for everything. And we appreciate everything you do. And we will see you in a little bit if you want to come back and join us. And they will be posted on FFA.org and agday.org if you would like to show these later. See you soon.